All right. We are going to take a look at Toy Tale for JavaScript here. Uh, I'd like to go and just do like a walkthrough of it. Um, Drop a 1 to 5 in chat, like how far you got and how you feel about it. Cool. Okay. All right. Hovering around the middle there. Cool, cool, cool. Um, all right. Before we get into it, is there any part of it that y'all um, felt like you were getting stuck on, or any part you want to get more understanding about in particular?
One thing for me, I think it was the post section, and I kept on getting a 304 status code,
Mhm.
and I couldn't figure it out. And then I just kept on trying a bunch of random stuff, and eventually it just fixed itself. So I don't know what that was.
You probably fixed it. It's not really good at fixing itself. So yeah, we'll take a look at there. And sorry. When we get to that point, why don't you give a holler and let me know if there's anything that we're doing that doesn't look familiar, or um, anything you see that you did that got caught up. Cool.
I looked it up, and it was saying that code comes from when uh, it hasn't been modified since the last time, so it doesn't update anything or something
mm,
like that.
okay. Um, cool. I'm curious about that, but yeah, let's take a look at it and see where we get. What else we have? Anything we want to take a look at in particular? Cool. Well, let's snap into it. Let's get top one. There we go. Get all y'all faces over here. There we go. Uh, cool. So let's take a look at what we're doing. So this is the Toy Tail Lab, like we saw. um, this exercises a lot of stuff. So what we're going to be looking at is um, basically we're going to be doing a fetch to populate all the stuff on the page. We're going to set up event listeners to listen for stuff, and we'll do posts and patches to create and update toys by making those requests and then updating it on the DOM there. So yeah, so we have three main requirements here. Let's just go through them one at a time. And actually, let's just talk through them a little bit before we jump into code, and maybe that'll help make the actual programming part look better or go better. So first off, we're going to access the list of toys from an API. I would say retrieve the list of toys from an API and render each of them on in a card on this page. And it's not mocked; it is just using JSON server. That's a weird language. Retrieve the list of toys from the JSON server and render each of them into a card on the page, in quotes. And so this is a short requirement, and it packs a lot of stuff in there, right? So to get stuff from an API, we're going to do a fetch with a GET request and handle it with something in the .then. And looks like if we have our data here, we have a list of toys, and each toy is an object with ID, name, image, and likes. So we need to go through that list, probably for each. We're going to, for each of those things in the list, render it to a page, or render it to a card on the page, whatever that means. So that means we need to, for each one, see what it looks like to create a card, put the right information into the card, and put that card on the page. So that's a bunch of things, right? make get request, fetch request, API, response with then each item in response list. We will, we're going to look at that data. We're going to create a card, whatever that looks like. I think we have some template stuff for that in there. Pop card with data and insert or append the card to the list on the page. So that's like 6 things we need to do for that one little line. So this is the first thing. It's not true. This is the first thing I should do. I don't always do. When you start working on stuff like requirements are notorious. I mean, they're tricky to write well. And throughout your career, you will see a lot of poorly specified stuff. And so the first thing I like to do is break it down kind of like this to see what it will require. If you're working with a team and you're kind of breaking up tasks, this is an important part because then like, oh, like, are these tasks that we can break out to different people on the team? If someone, does someone have to work on all of these? Is there a way to work on them together? Is there enough information to do these tasks at all? You'll often get requirements that are not well specified, and there's 2 ways to handle that, right? You can just start coding away and hope for the best, or you can go back to the person who wrote the requirement and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. Or you probably won't say that, depending on your relationship. You'll say, hey, I don't have enough information to build this the way that you want. Let me ask some questions or ask for some clarifications. And that applies here too. So if you ever come across something that's unclear about what you're supposed to do, ask. So the second part, we're going to hook up a form that enables users to add toys. There is a form there already, but let's say, add event listener to new toy form. And step 0 there implied is there a form? If not, make the form. So we're going to add an event listener to that toy form. We're going to, when the form is submitted, that new toy is persisted to the database and a new card showing toys added to the DOM. So we're going to make a post request. Fetch with the form data. And we're going to handle the request response. And this probably means, actually, let's put this over here. This probably means take the response data, new toy, and add it to the thing. So it to the toy list as above. So that's going to be creating a card, populating the card with data, and appending the card to the list on the page. And this already kind of makes us think, oh, since I'm doing this in more than one place, I probably want to make this a function. Before we write any code, we can see parts that we're going to be duplicating. And then maybe handle errors. So that's the second part. And the third part is creating an event listener that gives users the ability to click a button to like a toy when the button is clicked. Cool. So there's probably going to be a, is there a like button on the card? If not, create it. So we're going to have to add a, I'm going to say add a submit event listener there, right? Because it's going to be a click event listener. To the button. And then that is going to make a so yeah, there's gonna be steps over here too, right? Because we're gonna make a patch request to update the likes, and then when it gets back, we need to handle request date likes on page. And this probably is going to require something here. Find out how many likes the card toy has already. So once you take, we took 5 minutes to go through this and kind of break things out. And now we see that those 3 items are actually, 10 or a dozen items. So it's really useful to kind of go through and kind of figure out what the scope of everything is here. Any questions about like how we broke this down or what's expected here? Or did you come up with different or more things? Looking good? Cool. Yeah, and this list may and slash will be modified when you start coding because there's probably some implicit assumptions that we haven't thought of, or maybe some extra helper bits that we need to do to make this work. So yeah. So final project's going to look like this, and there's a picture that you can see on the on the repo. There's no tests, so we're just going to play by ear. Cool. So let's pop up on our server here. And so our server is here in the DB.json. And we want to just watch it. Cool. And awesome. So that's running there. We also want to start up our app server, right? And so, no, we want to just look at it. We want to look at it. We don't need to set up. This is not React yet. It's not React yet. Cool. We're just gonna go live and look at this here. And let me get it over here. Cool. This is an eternal frustration of mine with this. I would assume that if you click this button, it would add a new toy, but it really just shows the form. So we'll address that when we get to it. So let's take a look at the page that we have working here. So open a second tab in the terminal. What did it say? Okay, so yeah, we did that live server. Great. Cool. So on the index page, we're going to look for this toy collection div. And that looks like it is toy collection. There it is. Cool. Empty div with the ID of toy collection. So cool. Cool. So we are going to make a GET request, and we're going to fill that thing up with the stuff. Is there an index there? Yeah, there is. Cool. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure that where is our, did we hook up the JavaScript yet? I mean, it works, doesn't it? Oh, it's down here. Tell this was written a minute ago. Bring it up here and we'll put defer on it. Cool. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all that stuff there. Clean it up a little. All right, so this is just adding the making. Awesome. So we can not worry about that right now. So the first thing we want to do is, great. The first thing we want to do is make that fetch, right? So we have our server running here, and that is our resources there. And if we go and look at that, make sure it's working. Great, that works fine. And this is what our data is going to look like. So here, this is our data URL. So let's make a constant for that. We'll call it toy API. Why not? Cool. So the first thing we want to do is do that fetch. Fetch the toys. I'll do fetch toy URL, toy API. And we'll do our JSON dance. Response. And then let's just console log out the stuff and make sure it is all good. Close this again. So in our page, cool, page loaded, and we got all our toys. Sweet. We should be pretty comfortable with doing that by now. Cool. So the thing I want to do is, so hey, look at that. Made the request, handled the response. Sometimes they're easy. So we want to, for each item in the list, create a card. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a new function for this. And I'm just going to call it render toys, I guess. And let's write that function. In fact, let's do make sure everything's all legit here. Bloop, great, that seems to have worked. Cool. Cool. So now in here, we're going to do what we said we were going to do. We're going to look at each toy and put it on the page. I think I'm going to do this kind of like we did it before, I think. We'll say toys for each. I'll just say render toy because that's what we want to do with it, right? So yeah, so that means I need to write our function there. And since we kind of looked at what we need to do in our README, we can kind of see that we know we're going to want to put a thing on the toy list more than one time. So it makes sense to break that out into a function. So let's write that function. So I'm going to take a toy and let's see. So what do we want to do here? Did it? I think it gave a little template, right? Or do we have to copy that? Yeah, there we go. Here's what a card looks like. I'm just going to put this in here for a second so we can think about what we want to do. So cool. So we have an object and we figured out that we need to create a card, we need to populate the card with data and append the card to the list on the page. So let's start off with creating our card. Looks like that's going to be a div. So let's say our card. I'm going to make that a div. We want to add this class card to it so it gets styled right. How do we add a class to an element?
Dot class name.
Dot class. We could do dot class name. Absolutely. Since there can be more than one class on a element, I like to kind of future proof it by working with the class list and just say add it to that. Because if we say class name, that's going to just have the one class. And if we add another one, it's going to blow this one away. So I'm just going to add this to the class list. And this also lets us easily delete them later if we need to. Cool. So let me console log out the toy here to see what we've got. This should match our data that we had up here. So each toy has an ID, an image, likes, and name. And so for each render, we're going to do this. So we've got our div, and now we want to build this out. So the way that we've been doing it so far, we would create element H2, set the text content of the H2 to Woody, create an element for the and append that, create the image element, set the source and class, and append that, create a paragraph element, set the text element, add that, and so on. We have access to a way to do this a little bit more easily, though. So I'm going to kind of shortcut it here. I'm going to say card inner HTML. And so I'm going to just set the inner HTML of the card to all this stuff. And since I'm using backticks, that means that I can do template literal stuff. So I can replace these things. So let's see, I don't need the outside divs because it's already a div. So I'm adding the H2 in there, and I want to replace Woody with whatever the name is. And we saw we have that. Oh, we saw we have the name. So why is it giving me guff there? Because I didn't have anything. Cool. So I'm going to insert the toy name into our template there. We have a toy URL, and that's just going to be image there. So I can do the same thing, put a template literal in here. Toy image. And that class is going to be the same no matter what. And here is something interesting. I'm just going to put the likes in here for now. I know that this is probably going to be a little bit tricky later on. I think it's just likes. Yeah. Cool. And then there's a like button. Toy. Why is there an image on the? Yeah. Let's put the toy ID in here just because it has a spot for that. Great. And this like button. So cool. So we have used a template literal to create the HTML all in one shot here. There's no reason you can't do the create element, set the text and class and all that, and append it for each one of those things. That's a lot of typing. If I was going to do that, I might make another function to kind of automate the creation of elements somehow. And sometimes I do that. I think inner HTML here is more appropriate. It's just a little bit faster. And then we need to add it to that div. So that div was called, oops, that kit was called toy collection. Let's grab that div and we'll just grab it at the top here. What's called toy collection element equals. Cool. So now we have that toy collection element and we can just append our new toy to it. Our card. I have a pretty good feeling about that. Let's see if it works. Hey, look at that. That totally works. Except for Rex. We don't have a Rex image. Oh, does that just not work? Where's our data?
For me, the Rex image just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's not a good link anymore.
Let's get a good link.
Yeah. The Rex image is like much bigger
Mhm.
than the others, and like it worked on mine, but mine is like not as like formatted.
Mm.
So it's just kind of like it works, but it doesn't have like literal card looking cards. They're just kind of on the
Oh.
page.
I wonder if this will do it because I had a different. Nope. Let me just grab a Rex image from somewhere else. Toy Story Rex images. Is that the same one? Open image new tab. Yeah, I'll see if that one works. Bloop. No good there. Why won't it let us get a Rex? Let's grab one from down here. Maybe that'll help.
And I also like created a like an ordered list and then made each of my toys an item in that ordered list.
Hmm.
It looks a little different, but maybe
Yeah.
why it's the image load.
Yeah, so the I think this one. So the styles, the CSS that are included in this are made to work on that on a div. Um, wow, still no good. I wonder why. Do I need to restart the database maybe? I don't know. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so the styling here is, let me look at this for a second. So it is looking at the div here, and it is creating it. Yeah, so it's using a grid to kind of display them in a way. So if you turn it into a list, it's gonna look different. Yeah, so we're just throwing these divs into that other div, and then the CSS in there is saying put them in a grid, basically. And you can play around with that, but if you want it to look like this, you don't have to do anything but put it on. Other than our Rex here, it looks like everything is showing up all right. So put that out there, get rid of that. Cool. So that will do that. Any questions about this first part? You've probably done it a whole bunch by now, hopefully. But I'm happy to talk about any part that we just saw here. Cool. There we go. All right, so that's part one. And I think I'm gonna do this earlier rather than later because we talked about it last week, and I think it'll be a little more clear to do now than later on. So, like we were talking, separating the display from the data. I think I'd like to do that here because I know that we're going to be adding toys, we're going to be changing stuff. So I would like to separate our data from our display here because right now the only place that our data lives is in the HTML. So we can't look at our data, we can't see what data we have, we can't manipulate it. So let's do that here. I wish this went away. So let's make I'm going to do it with a let too. I'm going to say toy lists. Make this an empty array. And so here I'm just going to get my JSON and say toy list. JSON. So now we've got a toy list. It's not rendering right now. But we can look at our toy list and see that we have all our data in there and we can do stuff with it. Yeah, and so I'm just gonna render toys here. But instead of rendering with toys, I'm just gonna say toy list. And we could, if we wanted to, like we could pass in, the toys here, or toy list here, list there, and take it as an argument. Do the same thing. That might be better structurally, but I'm gonna stay with this way for now. If we need to change it, we can. So, and this is doing the same thing that we already did. Hopefully, the refactoring. When you refactor stuff, everything should work the same as it did before. So I'm just creating an empty list. When we get our toys back, I'm going to set that list to the stuff we got back, and I'm going to say render that list. And then the list is just the exact same stuff we wrote, only it's working on this list instead of just what we got back. Because when we render this, that just goes away after it's done. And there's our stuff. And again, we can kind of see what our toy list is. And if we, wanted to say toy list, toy list 0 name equals farts, whatever, Then we can render toys. And aha, there's Mr. Farts down there. We need to empty out our list here. So since we have our toy collection element up here, we can say the inner HTML is nothing. Now is rendering the same as it did before. Perfect. We can set the name to something else. We can render it out, and that's going to change. So now we can manipulate our data, and we can display the data that we have instead of having to kind of do it once and then figure out another way around it. And that will definitely come in handy soon. Any questions about doing that? A slight update to our code there.
Sorry, can you explain the fetch toy API, the second then that you have down there, where it says the arrow function for that one?
Sorry, for this one here on 21.
Yes.
Yeah. So when we are making a call to our URL, which is getting us our data back that looks like this. We're turning it into a JSON from JSON text to the JSON object. And so then we have a global or file scoped list here. And we're just saying set our big list of toys that we have to the list of stuff that we got back. And then once we have that list set, we can call render toys, and we have set render toys to work off of that list instead of passing it the list that we got back directly. Does that make sense? Or do you
Yeah,
have...
got it. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, it's right now it seems like same thing with extra steps, but we'll see soon that that's going to come in real handy. And again, just structurally, it's a little bit cleaner. Awesome, great question though. What other questions do we have? And hopefully, I mean, minus the making the toy list, because that's not strictly necessary. Hopefully, this getting stuff from API and putting on a page should be pretty rote for y'all by now. If you don't feel like you can just bang this out in 15 minutes or so, I would recommend doing some build and burns, going back to some labs that just do that, or making up your own. Just practice that till it becomes boring, pretty much, because that's almost everything we're going to do with this is going to be doing something like this. So just get the muscle memory for that in your fingers, and that'll give you more time to think about stuff that you need to think about for the other parts. Cool. So let's move on to the second part then. Hook up a form. So we've got our form. So just to kind of walk through what this does, because we just kind of present it as magic. I'm gonna change that because that's confusing. Add a new toy. Create a toy. Add a new toy. Add a new toy. Toggle add toy. Right. So form. Toggle add toy form. That's what's really doing. I don't know why we're toggling it. It's weird. We could just have that at the top without this part, but basically this is setting a variable that says whether we're showing it or not. And it's weird that it's called add toy because we're definitely gonna be using that name somewhere. So I'm gonna say call this show add toy form. Cool. Because that's what it is. Because it's not the naming things is important. So and it's using query selector here, even though it's weird. But it's saying when we click that button, we're going to set this variable to true or false, whatever the other one is. We're going to switch it to the other one. This toy form equals not the other thing. And then we're going to say if, oh boy, if that's true, then it's display block, which means show it on the page. If it's false, say none. I would, if I was writing this from scratch, I would say, you know, toy form container style display equals. And then I'd probably do a ternary here, right? Are we showing the form? Then we're going to set it to block. Otherwise, we're going to set it to none. And then that's a little bit clearer. Container is not a great useful, you know, I would say container, geez. Wow. Man, I have notes. Anyway, that's not the part we're looking at right now. Let me just make sure that works before I go shoot my mouth off. Okay, cool. And you know what? For our purposes right now, I'm going to set it true because we're going to be working with it a lot. So have it. Oh boy. Oh, we want to set it true by default, right? Toy form container. What was the selector on that? New toy button container, right? See, that's not super useful. Contain. That's not a good name because just looking at this, I don't really know what it is. I'm gonna set the block to start off with. Cool. So now it's going to show this by default. And we're not going to worry about that button right now. Anyway, cool. So now that we have that form, and do we have the form selected already? We don't. Form class add toy form. I'm going to call that, sorry. Yeah, so I'm going to make this an ID. I'm going to add an ID because I don't know what the styling looks like. Even though they're the same, ID hooks are way better. So I'm going to grab that. Oops, I didn't want to do that. Okay, so I'm going to grab the form up here. Add toy form. And it's called add toy form. Cool. And so now we can add an event listener on that form itself. Yeah, so let's do it. Yeah. So let's do it. Let's do it here. And so what kind of event listener are we going to be looking for here?
Submit,
Mm-hmm.
which after many frustrations realized I had a click there for the longest time.
Yeah. That's an easy thing. I still do that every once in a while. Yeah. And when you make that mistake a dozen times and you won't make it anymore, probably, or you'll make it fewer, less. Yeah. It's an easy mistake to make, but we are submitting a form. We want to get all the stuff in the form, and that's going to be a submit, which means that we want to listen to the form itself, not the button. Because if we put a click handler on that button, it's not going to do anything. Cool. So we want to add a function to that, and yeah, let's say that's just going to be add new toy, right? So let's write us that function there. And since it's an event handler, we're going to take the event. Cool. So how are we going to get the data out of this form here that we put in? Wes, any ideas?
No, not at the moment. I was sitting there kind of drawing a blank and saying, I know he's going to call on me right now.
Cool. So we need to get at the form itself, right? So do we know how we would get at the form itself?
You do
Event.target.
Yeah, event.target. Because again, the event target is the thing that threw the event, the thing that we listened on. So if we have an event listener on the form itself, the target for the event that throws is going to be the form. So great, we got the form. So we have on the form these input fields, and these input fields are named. So we can grab them by the value of that name on that form. And right now it's just a name and image. No likes, interestingly enough. So let's create the new toy object. Let's call it new toy. And so this is gonna be an object that looks kind of like these. So it's gonna need an ID. We're gonna let the database take care of that part. We don't want to touch that part. We're gonna need a name and an image, which we're getting from form. And I assume, does it say explicitly?
We'll need likes because the next portion we need to update it.
So it does tell us we want to set the likes to 0. So we're going to do that in our object. So we have our name, and that's going to be the form name. We have the image. That's going to be form. Hope they called it image. Image, right? And we get likes, and we're just going to set that to 0. So there's our new toy object. And so now we need to send that to the server. And since, spoiler alert, we're going to do a post to that URL. So let's go ahead and start that up now. So let's make a fetch. And we're going to make it to the toy API. And let's make our object. Here's our headers. I'm gonna make my headers up here. Every time it is accepts. And it is content type. Capital C, lowercase t. Cool. Cool. So now I can just add my headers here like this. And remember, this is a shortcut that's basically the same as saying that. Those are the same key and the same variable name. I need my method, which is going to be post. And I need my body object. And so that's going to be the new toy. Is this going to work? In fact, there's a couple things that are broken here. Anyone want to debug this before I hit the button?
I got a couple thoughts. So in the body, we need to like stringify.
Yeah.
Like JSON.stringify, and then put the new toy in there, and then up above, I would add the value after an image. And then I've got kind of a random question, but I've seen in some of the labs with the headers, they'll have accept in quotes, like they do content type, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter because this is this is JavaScript, so accept, not accepts. It's JavaScript. So is it accept or accepts? Oh my gosh. It's JavaScript, so by default, keys can be bare words like that, same as down here. But if you put it in quotes, it's not going to hurt anything.
Mine works with accepts.
Accept or accepts.
I was doing just accept and it was working.
Oh, do both work?
Maybe both work. I don't know. Interesting. Maybe it's not necessary at all. Who knows? Tradition. Hooray. Cool. I wonder if that's, I'm real curious about that, but not right now. Cool. So I feel like this is going to add a new thing. So let's write a little bit more code before we even test it. What does a post return? What does a what when the promise from a fetch with a post method comes back, what does that read? What does that give you?
Gives you like JSON formatted stuff.
Mm-hmm. What is the stuff?
Would it be like the values of new toy?
Yeah, can you be more precise there?
No.
Honest answer, great. So when you do a post to here or anywhere else, generally, it's going to return the new object that was created in the database, with importantly the ID that it gave you. So if we wanted to add this, we could just go ahead and add this new toy to our view, but we want the ID for reasons. So, and since we're getting that back, well, let's just look at what we're getting here. Our console. So there's all our objects. We don't need the console that long anymore. Cool. So I bet, yeah, I've done this before. There's Jesse. So if I create this, let's see if I get an error or anything. Oh, what happened there? Did you see that flicker and reload? What did I not do?
Prevent default.
I did not prevent the default. Wow. Okay, cool. But let's see if it actually worked anyway. Hey, look, Jesse's in there. So the post did work, but I didn't get to see what was returned. So I'm going to blast that out of the database there. Let's try it again. Bloop. What did I do wrong? Add new toy. Add new toy. Event. Prevent. PREVENT DEFAULT. Calling it. Interesting. Let me reload just to double check. Wild. What am I doing wrong there? Let's see. Okay, what am I doing here? Prevent default. Add toy form. Add event.
Is live server trying to do more than you want it to again?
Live server is trying to do more than I wanted to again. Ah, son of a gun. And I solved that last time by moving the database outside of it. I hate it. Do I want to do that again? Yeah, let's go ahead and do that again. Yeah, why not? So I'm gonna stop that. Stop that. I'm gonna move my DB.json back one, and I'm gonna open that one up. So I made that mistake last time, not looking at the right one. Now I can watch that one. Okay, I feel better now. Great. Did it not start up? 3,000. Did I not start up in the right place? I didn't start up in the right place. One more time. There we go. Make sure our API works. Bloom. Let's get that started up again. Hey, hey. And now, there we go. Now we can see Jesse's coming back. Do not like that. Do not like that. Cool. So we are getting our object back. It is on there because we've reloaded several times. Let's take our fake Jessies out of here. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So let's check this again for real. So Jessie is still down there. Jessie is still down there. Did I not edit the right file? I feel like I edited the right file.
It's back in here for some reason on the left.
Oh, go away. Let's try that. Okay, this is. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this DB.json altogether. I'm going to start up this one. Make sure Jessie is not in my data here. Great. Okay, moment of truth. Okay, no Jessies. Let's add a Jessie. Okay, we've added it in the database. There she is. And she is not on the page. Great, but we are getting that back. Fantastic. Okay, cool. So we know we can now add a Jessie to our database. We can get the new Jessie data back when it returns. So all we need to do now is add her to the page. And we have already set up a way to do that. Cool. So instead of console log, I need to add Jessie to our toy list. So I'm going to do this here. So I'm going to pop Jessie on the toy list there. Or push, sorry. JSON, great. And then I'm going to go ahead and just render toys. And so that will blow away what we have on the page, go through the toy list that we just put Jessie on there, and do the thing. Let's see if that works. So Jessie's there. Let's get rid of her before we go back and put her on again. Okay, if we reload, oh, I need to restart it after I edit it manually, I think. Oops. I need to just not type random keys. Okay, server restarted. Jessie is no longer there. Let's get Jessie on there. Okay, there she is. And if we look at our toy list, hey, look at that. We can see that Jessie's on there. Cool. A lot of fussing around, but we got it working. Awesome. Yeah. And again, if we didn't care about separating stuff, here we would just say add new toy, because that would just throw her on the DOM. But we want to keep our data in a list for reasons, which we'll see immediately. So any questions about doing a post here? Anything that you got caught up on, or any part of this that doesn't make sense, I guess? All right.
One thing real quick.
Yeah, there we go.
What you just said there about how if you don't have the data separated, you would just do add new toy instead of render toys.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that just run this function again and then?
Oh, sorry.
fetch all that?
I would. Yeah. So I would say render toy here. And that would create the card for her and add her to the list. But then if you, well, she would show up. Yeah, and that's one way of doing it. It's definitely a way of doing it. Rule 1, it works. Cool. Any other questions about this part before we go on to the last and trickiest part? cool. So, great, yeah. So we are going to increase a toy's like. So when we hit that button, we're going to send our patch request, and it will update the toy. And so that means we need to give that toy's ID in our path here. So first off, let's great. Let's take a look at what we need to do. We need to get that button for each toy. And here's that button there. We're going to need to add something to this here. Yeah, interesting. So since we are adding it via setting the inner HTML, there are a couple things we could do here. We could pull it out of here and then just add it by creating the element, and adding the class and adding the ID and adding text and all that. That's one way of doing it. I don't think I want to do that because that's adding a bunch of lines that are going to be harder to read. I think what I'd like to do is grab that button specifically. And here is one of the instances where I actually want to grab it by class, I think. Or you know what? I'm going to change this a little bit so I don't have to add it to class. I don't think we're using this ID anywhere else. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say button ID, like button ID, like button ID. I'm going to call this, I'm going to say it's going to be like button and then the ID of the toy. And now I'm just going to set it to like button ID. Cool. And let's see what that looks like in the HTML here. So let's look at Buzz. So Buzz, here's our H2 with the name. Here's our image. Here's the likes display. And here's the button. It's got the class for styling. And I'm changing this to a unique ID that is more than just a number because we want to actually say what it is. So the ID for each one's gonna be like button number. And since we've created that, I can now select that button by that ID. So I'm gonna say like button equals, and just for kicks, I'm even gonna do my get element by ID here. Let's just console log that out. So we can see. No, cannot read properties of undefined, create element by get card, get element by ID is not a function. How dare you? How dare you? Oh, because it's not in the DOM yet. Maybe. Interesting. Interesting. Well, that's fascinating. Okay, cool. Try to be fancy and just doesn't pay off. Let's do documents. That normally works. Am I making that up? Have I not done that before? Huh. Or did I spell? Okay, there's null, so we're not actually getting it. Oh, it's not in the document yet. Let's try that. Boom, there we go. So here, if you're going to do something like this, make sure it is in the document before before selecting it. And again, you can not do this just by create element button, button class list, add like button, add the text and all that. It's JavaScript. There are many ways to do things. But cool. So now we have a handle on that like button. So what I would like to do is add an event listener to that like button. And in fact, I'm not even gonna put that in a constant because I don't need to. I'm just going to add the event listener directly to the selected element. So this is going to be a click because it's a button. And so I need to call a function that says, increment likes. Let's just write that function down here. Event, boom. And I don't know, event target. Cool. So when we hit that button now, like button is not defined. Like button is not defined. Oh, because I didn't do that. Great. Go. Awesome. So now when I click that, we're going to get the button that we clicked. Oh, I see why they did that. That's no good. Don't like that. Okay, cool. So we have our button here. How do we get the toy for the button that we clicked? And I can answer for why it just had the number there, but I'd like to have some ideas. Ryan, any ideas?
Can we travel through the DOM tree to get what that button's attached to?
We could. We could. So what that is going to be attached to is an element, right? It's going to be that card element. And we don't really have any of that information in the element, right? So this was just a number, an ID number, I think, because since we have the button element, when we click on it, we could probably, if that was just the number, grab that ID and grab the, use that to update that one. Again, that is storing data in the HTML and it's kind of gross. And an ID of just a number doesn't tell us anything about what it is. So that's kind of a weird, gross way to keep that data around. What we can do is use that closure stuff that we talked about before. So instead of just calling it directly so it gets the event, I'm going to do an arrow function here. And what I would like to do is say I want to call our increment likes function. And I'm going to change the function to, instead of taking the event, take an ID. And since I have the ID on the toy here, I can call it like that. And this is, so that closure thing, that means that when you create a new scope, like a function inside a current scope, inside another scope, as long as the stuff inside the inner scope refers to stuff outside here, this data out here won't go away because there's still a reference to it. So we've attached something to it. So even though the function ends, we'll still have access to this data. So now on each button is attached that event listener, and the function that is the event listener is holding on to that ID. So we don't need to do something gross like pull it out of the ID here. So let's see if that actually works. So if we click that, hey, there's the IDs. Cool. All right. So now I can start writing my function. Any questions about this? Because this is kind of computer sciencey. But again, it's a pattern that you're going to see a lot. Any questions about that closure bit?
I have a kind of a peace of mind question.
Yeah.
Because you say a lot like, hey, if it works, it's right, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like I've done a few things here differently.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I just needed to hear you say that.
Yeah, there's JavaScript. There are a bunch of different ways to do things. When we get to Python, Python's motto is something, there's one way to do it. Also absolutely not true. There's lots of ways to do things in pretty much any language. So yeah, this is a way to do it. This is the way that makes sense to me, I think, and keeps the code like in a way that I would want to work with in the future. But if you're doing a different way, like if you are keeping that just as number and grabbing the ID out, or doing something where you're pulling it out of the HTML or whatever, like if it works, it works. It's a little gross, but that's my subjective opinion. And if you did something like that on a code challenge and it worked, totally fine. The drawback to it, I think, would be when you're working on your project, either this one or one in the future, you'll be doing, more than a couple hours of work on this project, on this lab. So doing, either kind of future proofing it like this, or doing a refactor once you get to that point, is going to save you coding time in the long run. So if you have to do some like weird HTML grabbing and stuff, that'll work. And getting it working is important. But when you spend another week on that same project and have to kind of like keep doing workarounds, figuring out how to do it without those workarounds is going to save you a lot of time in the longer run. And again, that's sort of like that cost benefit analysis you want to do. If it's faster to just like do it the gross way and get it done, and you're never going to touch that project again, fantastic, that totally works. If you have to decide for yourself what the line is, like how much time I spend future proofing or refactoring versus how much time that's going to save me down the line. So that's a you call. As long as it works, you're all good.
At this point in time, as long as it works, I'm happy. And then
Yeah.
as I get experienced, I'll know when I want to.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a little bit of a stretch maybe, but it's good to know. And going forward, you're going to see code that looks like this, that you'll be working on or learning from. So it's good to know. And if you don't use it, that's fine. But just keep it in mind as something that you might see and need to understand. Awesome. Thanks for asking. Cool. So let's go ahead and do our patch. So it's going to look a lot like this, right? So let's get rid of our console log since we know we're getting a good ID. Let's do our fetch. And so we need to hit that toy API, right? But since we're doing a patch, we're going to be updating a particular toy. So we need to change the URL a little bit. And I like doing that with template literals, as always. So I'm going to have the toy API up front, and I'm just going to say toy API /ID. So that's going to look like that, right? So we're getting the toy, and if we just want to get one, that's the way we do it. If we do a patch to this, we'll just be updating this one. Or if we do a delete, it'll delete just that one. Cool. So that's our URL, and we're going to need our options. Fortunately, we got our headers all written out. We're going to need our method here, which is a patch. And we're going to need our body. And fortunately, our README has let us know. So all we need to do is pass a likes and the new number of likes. And that's going to basically say, hey, just update this here. Everything else is going to be the same. So let's go ahead and do that. So here's our, I'm just going to stringify it in place here. And so I'm going to put our object here. It's going to be likes, and we need to increase the number of likes. So if we were doing some higgity pokety HTML jamming around, if we didn't have our data separated out into a list, how would we get the likes for that particular toy, just given the ID?
Toy dot likes or something like that.
So we don't have access to toy down here, right? If we're only getting the ID.
Oh.
Or if if we were using the event and we're getting the event target and only had access to the HTML, knowing the ID, how would we pull the likes out of here, out of this HTML here? Where we have. So once we're on the page, oh, maybe I should stop writing stuff that doesn't work here. Cool. So looking at this HTML here, how would we pull the likes out of this? John, any thoughts?
It would be a sit on the HTML, right?
Yeah, out of this, and this is a gross way of doing it, and also the way that people usually do it when they're starting off.
Would it be like a document get element or
Yeah, so say we've got this element here, and we need to grab this number 5 out of it. So basically what we need to do is, okay, we're going to get this element. We need to grab this paragraph somehow, maybe with a query selector. Then we have the string 5 space likes. We'd have to like split the string out or something and then grab the first part of it, or do a regular expression, grab the number and then turn that text into a number and then update it that way. And then when we get our post back, find this again, and then update it to say the number we got likes. And then of course, if we decide it's going to be like likes :5, that code all breaks. Which is why we have planned ahead. And we have put all of our data here. So if we look at our toy list, we have an ID, say, we can find it, right? We can say, I'll say toy equals 5, I'll say. Toy list is not defined. Nope, uppercase. Hey, look at that. Now we can find the toy with that ID. We could do it by index, like toy list, here's our ID 5, -1. That's going to give us the same thing. That works until we delete one and the indices and the IDs don't match up anymore. So doing a find on our toy list is going to be probably the way that I would do it this time around. So let's do this up here in our thing. Let's say our toy. And let's grab it out of the toy list like that. You can do a find. And we're going to find the first toy where the toy ID equals our ID. And let's comment this out here. Let me just console log out this toy object. Sweet. So if I click Buzz's like button, hey, we got Buzz. Great. So that learn how to use, find, sort, map, all that stuff. It's going to serve you real well. Alternately, if we wanted to do something different, we could, instead of making that a list, make it an object and keep them keyed by IDs. That's too much work for right now. We'll just do a find. Cool. So now we have the toy. We know how many likes it has. So now we can set that new number, and that's going to be toy likes +1. Great. And when we get that fetch back, And let's just console log out what we get there. Great. Let's up Buzz's likes. Cool. And so that patch gives us the new the whole object with the updated likes. And so now we can say, since we have our toy here, and that toy is just an object that lives in there, so we can, since it's a reference object, we can change it. We can say toy likes equals JSON likes. And so that should be the new one. So we've changed our toy list here. And so that means since we've changed our toy list, we want to render our toys again. Render toys again. And since it's just rendering off the toy list, it should render the whole thing. Let's see if I'm lying. Hey, look at that. If I reload, it stays. Cool. Jesse some likes sitting down there. Oh, Mr. Ham. Cool. And again, if we look at our database, which is somewhere, that number will have changed. Cool. This is the trickiest bit. Some code challenges will have something like this on it. So again, you can, rule one, if it works, it works. You can keep a list of your data, update the data, and re-render the page, or re-render that list. Or you can go into the HTML, find the number that you need, turn it into a string, change stuff in the database, find the HTML, and update the HTML. Whichever way is easier for you or makes more sense to you. Cool. I think that satisfies all our things. Take a moment to, oh yeah, let's appreciate this. Cool. Yeah, I think this might be I'm not going to say it's harder, but I think it definitely covers a superset of all the things that are going to be on the code challenge on Thursday in 2 days. So this is, I think, the best lab that we have to build and burn. I think if you can knock out this lab in 2 hours, you'll have no problem with the code challenge at all. If you can't, no worries. Just keep practicing. Yeah, what questions do we have about anything here that we've done?
I saw earlier you deleted a event listener for the DOM content loaded. Why did we delete that again?
Because we can just use defer instead now. This code was written a while ago, I think, and so there are some artifacts that aren't in line with modern coding practices. I should submit some change requests to it. Did that answer what you're asking?
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Other questions?
So I had started just thinking about like how to spend my time, practicing the next couple of days. I had started working on like the Fetch Dog CEO lab. But do you think it would be more worth our time to just kind of keep working on like if I finish Toy Tale, just like try to do it from scratch again?
Yeah, just blow it away and start from scratch again. Yeah, if you can do that half a dozen times before Thursday, you're gonna be golden, I think. This definitely exercises everything. The fetches are the most recent stuff we learned, right? So I think those are pretty important to practice. But again, just like this first part, doing our fetch and getting stuff on the page, like this, this page worth of stuff here, like if you can do that in 15 minutes, you're gonna have a lot more time to think about the other stuff. And this is pretty much the same every time. So if you're like, if your brain's hurting and you just want to like dumb practice, this is a great thing to practice. Just do it until it's boring. Cool. Yeah, and you can do that here or on the Dog CEO or whatever else you like, or make up your own. What other questions we got? Cool. Sweet. So yeah, should I post that code? No, I'll post this code in a gist or something and link that on the video. I'll post the video up on the playlist and in the channel so y'all can see that. Yeah, again, this is the best thing I think we have to review. So yeah, just keep hitting it. And if you have any questions, whether like errors or just conceptual stuff, feel free to post in the channel anytime. Happy to answer anything you got. Otherwise, last call for questions or comments.
What's the what's the git command to delete the directories again? So like we just like keep on forking and going.
You can either do a git rm or you know, if you don't want to save it, just back out and blow away the directory from the command line. You can do a rm-rf will delete that directory. Be very careful with it because I've seen people delete their entire machines with a typo there on a production site for a large bank, Washington Mutual. So be careful when you do that. That was a real bad day. Yeah. Well, or you can practice with git rm and do it that way. Or just clone it down to a new directory somewhere. Give it a different name. Anything else? All right. Well, cool. Thanks for hanging out. I hope this was useful or interesting. And I will see y'all in a little bit. Catch you later.